The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
In only a quarter century, the Toronto Raptors went from league outsiders to We the North NBA champions. Head coach Nick Nurse had a lot to do with it. He's with us tonight on the Raps and his new memoir that tracks his long road to victory. Then our Ontario Hubs explain why Collingwood's new lobbyist registry is just part of the municipal reforms underway there. And from whether Ontario can afford its 2020 budget promises to how it's going in the province's virtual schools, we've got the Agenda's Week in Review. It's Friday, November 13th, and that's all ahead on the agenda. In his rookie season as head coach of the Toronto Raptors, Nick Nurse brought home a championship. It wasn't a fluke or beginner's luck. It was the culmination of years of work, paying his dues, and yes, a bit of inspiration from his second love, jazz. That path offers many lessons, and he details it in his new book, Rapture: 15 teams, 4 countries, 1 NBA championship, and how to find a way to win damn near anywhere. And it brings the Toronto Raptors' Nick Nurse to our virtual studio tonight. Hi, Nick.
Hi, how are you?
So
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being with us. So you saw before I started the intro, I did a little, so excited to have you in the show.
It's great. I'm excited to be here. I'll go,
Okay, professional. You grew up in Carroll, Iowa. You excelled in baseball and football. You also still hold your high school's record for pole vaulting. When did you decide to commit to basketball?
Probably after our high school team won the state championship. That kind of nudged me in the direction of basketball. I was just I was okay. I played all the sports and had some chances to play football, had some chances to play baseball, had some chances to play basketball, and really didn't know which one. But then just kind of fell into the basketball and was given a scholarship at the University of Northern Iowa. Mm-hmm. And I put all the other sports away because I figured I better try to keep my scholarship for the 4 years I was going to be there.
But what was it about basketball that just got under your skin?
I think it's just the personal level of touch with the fans. You know, I think they're so close. You're so visible on the court as a basketball player, the intensity of the fans being there. I think that's hard to measure in the other sports because it's, again, such a vibrant, electric sport.
So on the day that you were named coach of the Raptors, in your book, you write that you called someone who you say is, quote, one of the greatest coaches almost no one has ever heard of. Who is Daryl Mudra, and what role has he played in how you coach?
Yeah, nickname is Dr. Victory, which is a really good name for a coach. He was actually the football coach at the University of Northern Iowa, where I was going to school. He taught a sports psychology class there at the university. He coached from the press box, and that was his way of giving his coaches and players the chance to, kind of do their thing. Let the players play, let the coaches coach, and that intrigued me. And that's what he taught. He was years and years ahead of his time, and he was very successful and a very interesting man.
You write in the book that you couldn't exactly do that now. You couldn't walk onto the court and at the beginning of the game walk to the press box and be like, guys, have a good game. And in the book, you write that a big part of your job is to, quote, recognize my players' selfish goals. Why? Because that seems to counter what we're told about teamwork, that there's no I in team.
Well, that's being honest, right? That's kind of laying it out there on the line. I think most people talk about, sacrifice everything for the team and it's all team, which in a sense is true. But I think in reality, these guys are making a living, right? We want to increase their value in the marketplace. If they have goals to be all-stars or to secure a 5-year contract, or I don't know, maybe it's to make the team. Whatever it is that we want to help them reach their own personal goals. We work really closely on developing them as players and as people. And then they kind of help us work on our goals, which is to win lots, because that's how we're judged in professional sports.
And you also recognize that you also have your own personal goals. So how do you get everybody on the team to buy into what it is that you're trying to promote on the court?
Well, my personal goals are linked really closely with winning and winning championships, right? I think that's kind of what I do, why I do what I do, and what's what gets me out of bed every day. And that's the vision that I try to create, and that's how it starts. Day one of each season, we try to lay out our vision for can we be champions, and usually that answer is yes. And then how are we going to go about it? We formulate a plan that links to our vision and our goals, and then we get to work. And that's what I do every day.
And some people might see your career and be like, oh, in his rookie season, he's gotten this NBA championship. But actually, at the age of 20, you managed to scout yourself to a team in England. And in the book, you write that you weren't part of what is called a coaching tree. So you put together a package with your resume, cover letter, and newspaper clippings about your playing career. And it worked. You received an offer to play point guard. But you were also asked to be point guard / coach. You had to coach the team as well, yep. Which is unconventional, but you were on your way. Looking back, you created the path that you're on today. Do you ever wonder where you would have been had you not bet on yourself?
Sometimes I do. There's also a section in the book when I talk about I was like 26 or 27, and didn't know if I was any good at coaching, and wrote down a few things else I decided maybe I would do other than coach, and they looked really bad to me. So I thought I better start studying harder on how to become a better coach. But I think sending out all those packages and letters, that is kind of betting on yourself, right? And hoping that somebody's going to return one of those. This was back before the internet, when you really actually had to go send them out and put airmail stamp on there and send out a big vanilla envelope and everything with your resume and CV. And the first line I wrote on that is, I want to play and or coach overseas. And the guy in Derby, England, who hired me said, it says you want to play and or coach. How about play and take the or out, play and coach? And I said, sounds good. And I was on a plane about 4 days later, and I was in Derby, England, getting ready to go.
I mean, you make it sound easy, but at the time, you weren't even old enough to drive your players around, so somebody else had to drive. Yeah. During that period of time, what did you learn about yourself?
Well, I think there was a big part of me that still wanted to see how good a player I could become. It's like my 4 years at university finished, and it's like, you're done. And that's kind of what pushed me to even further love of the game. I was like, man, I've now put my whole life and soul into this sport, and you're telling me I can't play it anymore. There was part of me that wanted to continue playing and see if I could get better and better, just to see how good I could get. And always, then I started thinking, hey, I love this game, man. I want to stay around it. Let's see if I can stay employed as a coach. And luckily, here we are 30 years later, still employed as a coach.
Well, I mean, your path to the NBA has been a winding one. What is the most important lesson that you learned from coaching in Europe and in the D League that has informed your coaching in the NBA?
Well, I think that taking a chance at wanting to be a head coach at such a young age, I had all these ideas in my head, and I just wanted to try them. Right? I had to know if my ideas that were spinning around in my head were right or wrong. And that gave me great experience. I think leading a team, being up in front of the team, making the decisions on who plays, who substitutes in, calling the timeouts, drawing into game plays, getting guys to believe in themselves, developing chemistry, defining roles, all those things that a head coach needs to do, I was doing over and over and over again from the age of 23 on. Nobody knew or heard of me when I became the Raptors head coach, but I'd already been a head coach for over 20 years in professional basketball.
Shortly after you became the Raptors head coach, you visited legendary coach Phil Jackson, who everybody knows, in Montana. What was the purpose of your trip?
Well, it was just try to learn anything, right? Just try to learn anything. And he's won 11 championships. There he is with this, telling him to run the triangle offense, which I was emulating. I ran that for 9 years coaching in England, and I was watching all the Bulls tapes and running the triangle offense. And but But what I was also learning was, since I was watching those games over and over, I was learning a lot about him, how he substituted, how he called timeouts, how the decisions he made. And I was learning a lot about coaching. I always say he was my mentor, although he didn't know it. I was just kind of a one-way mentorship, but got to go out there and meet him and just have some deep conversations with him about leadership basketball and trying to succeed at the highest level.
I mean, in the book you write, because of the time difference, I lived in England, and you literally have to wake up at like 3 or 4 to watch the games. And you did this. And this was back in the day when it wasn't online. You had to order VHS tapes. So I know the way that you just put it was kind of cool, kind of like how I'm trying to be with you. But, finally meeting your mentor, even though he didn't know he was your mentor, that must have been like such a thrill for a young man coming from Iowa.
It was so amazing, right? I really had no idea what we were going to do. He agreed to see me, and he didn't say, like book 2 days, book 3. He just said, yeah, come on out. So I ended up booking 3 days, not knowing if I was going for a cup of coffee with him or what. So I landed, went for this cup of coffee with him. We talked for about 90 minutes. He said, hey, jump in my truck. We jump in his truck. He drives down the road, pulls over at the side of the road. It's cherry season. He buys this huge bag of cherries, throws them between us, rolls down the windows, and we're driving around him. And I'm saying to myself, oh my God, I'm driving around with Phil Jackson, eating cherries, spitting the seeds out the window, like, this is awesome. This is amazing. I mean, really, really, really was surreal for me, and such a thrill. It really was.
That was the life that you created, right? With hard work.
I guess so, but lots of cool things have happened, right? And I don't know. I loved all those jobs, and yeah, I was working hard and trying to improve at my craft each and every step along the way. That's for sure.
Speaking of mentors, you mentored Nate Bjorkgren, who just became head coach of the Pacers. Is there anything that you learned from that trip with Phil Jackson that you passed on to Nate?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I told Nate every single thing that we talked about. I think that Nate and I are obviously we're like this. We're the best of friends. We worked about, I don't know, 16, 18 hours a day side by side for 4 years when we started the Iowa Energy in the NBA D League at the time. And we finally figured out how to win a championship there. So we've shared some really special moments. Yeah, I told him everything about that trip.
You mentioned the triangle offense, Phil Jackson, and you have your own version of that, which is you refer to it as the Monk offense. And in your book, you write, I have referred to it as the Monk offense, a reference to the legendary jazz pianist and composer Thelonious Monk. In truth, I borrowed the term. I first heard it from veteran coach and offensive innovator Ron Ecker. Great jazz has a structure beneath it, and the artists are deeply grounded in its fundamentals. But there's also a freedom and spontaneity. The musicians step forward and create, and the great ones innovate. That's how I see basketball, free-flowing and seemingly random, but with everyone versed in the underlying system. It only works if we're all speaking the same language. When it comes to playing basketball, especially in super tight games, how do you get the players to speak the same language?
Well, we do a lot of group work. I would say that, going back to that analogy, it'd be like constant rehearsal. If we stay with the band thing, we're constantly in the garage playing, and we almost always hit the floor, and we're always doing it in groups of 4, groups of 5, even with no defense out there, just getting the feel and the rhythm and the flow and all the things that the offense needs. And that develops some confidence, that develops a high level of trust, and that, again, just develops some sensationalism. That's why that freedom needs to be there. We need to see them be spectacular, because they can be spectacular.
As a coach, you place a lot of emphasis on the shot spectrum. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, it's just a spectrum of the shots we want to take on one end, the really high percentage, according to math, shots that produce winning basketball, and it goes down to lower percentages as we go. And we just try to live in this high percentage area. And stay completely away from the low percentage ones. That's it.
You know what surprised me? I used to play basketball back in the day, and then I stopped growing. And that was before the WNBA. But what surprised me was that, you're not a fan of the mid-range jump shot, which I thought was surprising. I thought the worst shot to take was the three-pointer.
Well, 3 points is worth more than 2, right? So the mid-range jump shot is only worth 2. And even though you'll make a lesser percentage, but the true percentage with that extra 50% value on there makes the three-pointer a better shot to take. We don't totally discount the mid-range jump shot. As you can remember, Kawhi Leonard shot a lot of them, Serge Ibaka, Pascal Siakam, Kyle Lowry. We have some kind of ways we massage those rules and work them into our game, and they become good shots for us too. But we just want to take a high percentage shot as often as we can.
Is it hard to change the minds of players who have been coached the opposite of what you're teaching?
I don't know. It's a little challenging. I wouldn't say it's hard, but it's again, it's teaching. It's trying to put it out there, telling them why we're doing it. We're giving them some time to kind of work their way out of kind of the old system and into a new system. Have some patience with that, and just kind of stay with it. And then they have a little success, and then they start believing what we're doing.
Well, I've changed my mind in how I coach my son, because I used to tell him, don't take the three, drive it to the basket, or do like a mid-range jump shot. Well, you keep a bronze elephant in your office, and it's significant. Yes. Can you explain to us what the story is behind it?
Yeah, it's just I think that with any team or any organization, there's always problems that arise, and I think that you have to take care of those immediately. You have to have enough guts and confidence and trust in each other to just put your problems out there, find solutions, and move on. And my bronze elephant's just a kind of a fun way. If anybody has a major problem, they come in and grab it and set it in front of my desk, and then we sit down with a little smile, and we know we're getting ready to talk about something serious, and we handle it. And I just want to make sure we do that, so we're not avoiding the elephant in the room.
What does that do? Because in the book you do say that sometimes it can be hard to tell somebody something that they might not want to hear. But when it comes to a team on the court, if you don't address something with that individual, it could spill over to the other players, correct?
I think that mostly it lets you hold everyone accountable, right? We certainly don't treat everyone the same. We treat everybody individually different because they're all different individuals, but it gives you a chance to hold everyone accountable. So let's say one of the star players doesn't have a very good defensive game because of lack of effort. And the elephant in the room is, well, he didn't play hard enough at the defensive end, and we want to address that elephant in the room. That's it. We think that helps us be able to do that. So,
what is the nurse's pill? It might sound something medical, but it's not.
Yeah, it's prescription to better shooting. It is medical. No, I'm just kidding. So it's just a basketball we designed for kids. I wish I had one on me here. I should, but it teaches them how to shoot, and it gives them a visual each time they shoot to let them know if they're doing it correctly. It's a fast way of learning and teaching the proper fundamentals of shooting for young kids.
And, I know you're very humble the way you say it, but when this happened, it was when you found yourself in a situation where you didn't have a job and you didn't have income coming in, and you decided to become a shooting coach.
Yes. Well, I got back from Europe, and we were trying to get this Iowa Energy team started, and I went to watch a young kids tournament. There was like 80 teams there, like from age 10 to 14, maybe 8 to 14 years old. And I was amazed at all the people, all the parents, all the games, all the refs, everything. What a tournament for young kids to play. And I sat up there in the crowd just kind of randomly, and I said, boy, none of these kids know how to shoot. So I literally said, I'm going to start teaching them how to shoot. And I went back and typed out a little flyer and took it back the next day and started handing it to parents and said, we're going to have a shooting camp in 2 weeks down the street. Bring your kids. Let's start getting better at shooting. And that's how it started.
And now you use that in the NBA, which is really cool.
Well, the beautiful thing about that was the more you teach things, the more you learn about it. And I literally was teaching thousands and thousands of kids every day how to shoot. And I was learning all these little bad habits or ways to fix these habits or ways to speed up the process. Yeah, it helped me become a better shooting instructor, which is very important.
I mean, bringing Canada an NBA championship, you became an honorary Canadian, but actually your Canadian roots go further back than most people might think. Your mother's grandparents were originally from Ontario, correct?
Yeah, Lucan.
Lucan. And so does Ontario, what's up, Lucan? Does Toronto feel like an extension of the Midwest in some ways?
Very much so. In fact, I was driving up here yesterday north of Toronto a couple hours to Collingwood, Blue Mountain, and several times my wife and I said, man, this looks just like Iowa. So very similar, very similar.
Canadians are conscious of the ways in which they're different from Americans. Does that play into the narrative as the only Canadian team in the NBA?
I don't know. I'm trying to build this as a destination, as the best place to be in the NBA. I think all the best players in the world should want to play here, and we've got an incredibly diverse team, organization, staff, city, and this is a destination, in my opinion, for the greatest basketball in the world.
I'm not going to argue with that. I'm kind of biased. You're a member of the Coaches for Racial Justice. In light of everything that transpired this summer with the murder of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement getting a global stage, how did you balance being an ally while supporting your players and keeping your team focused in the bubble?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there was any way to keep them focused without giving a platform for our team to discuss these matters freely, openly, and without having to worry about basketball first and foremost, if that makes sense. I mean, we had to get this topic out, get some things off our chests, come together as a team or an organization. I think a lot of people have commented about how proud they were of the Raptors and how we kind of really went out on the forefront and some of the things we did. And I'm proud of the guys too. And all I was trying to do was give attention to the issue at hand, give the players a platform and a lot of room to speak and speak freely about it and help them navigate some of their ideas moving forward.
On the Raptors, you have a team that has a lot of young Black men, and you were all celebrating being champions. COVID hit, and as the coach, you have that burden on your shoulders to help navigate them, not just through the grief of what happened this past summer, but the grief of having to adapt to how we live during a global pandemic. How did you navigate that as a coach?
Well, I think the first thing I did was just make sure we checked and see how they were. You know, health-wise, every day somebody from our organization would check in just to make sure they're healthy, right? And I think again, try to explain, give them some space. It was a bit shocking for everyone, and just same for us as basketball people. We were going about this thing at 100 miles an hour, then we all slammed on the brakes. So just adjusting to a new life, trying to explain to them when things may start up, try to explain to them the pandemic and how to stay safe and all those things. I think again, just showing concern, putting some virtual hugs out there, or virtual arms around the guys when they needed it, and just be good human beings.
You launched the Nick Nurse Foundation this year. What is that?
Well, it's a way for me to use my platform that I've been given to give back. And there's kind of three strands we're going to focus on: literacy, basketball, and music. And we're just going to help people around Toronto, around Canada, strive in those areas. We're going to give them great opportunities. I don't know, buy them instruments, give them lessons, put them in bands, give them books to read, show them how to shoot the basketball, all those things, and just try to improve their self-image, improve their lives if we can.
You're a father to young children, and you're a coach and all these other things, but off the court, you're also in the process of getting your doctorate from Concordia University. First of all, where do you find the time? And second, what's your thesis on?
Well, good question. Good follow-up question to my foundation. The thesis is actually I'm studying NBA players and their charitable impacts that they have in their local communities. That's what I'm researching. Done all the reading and researching about all the good and bad, and I'm again just trying to grow my knowledge so I can pass it on to our team. I think one of my critical jobs is to make sure our players have a big impact in where they're from in their local communities. So that's what that is on. Where do I find the time? I haven't done very well lately. I've defended 3 chapters of my dissertation right from the bubble before this game started. I haven't done much work since, so I need to get to it because I can see the end from here. I can see it.
Don't tell me you're also you're learning how to bake bread, because that would be.
No, I'm not.
We now know when the season is starting. Do you know where the Raptors will be playing in the new season?
I do not, but we should have an answer shortly. And I hope that it's Toronto.
Is there a possibility of Toronto being a host?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, yes.
If so, if it happens to be that Toronto is the host, what kind of support does the Raptors organization need from the city, the province, the federal government to make it work?
Well, first of all, the NBA has done an outstanding job, obviously, with the bubble, the testing, the protocols that they put in place. So I would hope that the country takes that into consideration. We would be as safe as possible, right? We certainly want to try to play our season. We certainly want to play it in Toronto. We think it means a lot to everybody that we're here, but we want to make sure we're safe. We certainly don't want to spread the virus or anything like that. So I think the NBA and the Raptors and everybody would do everything to the highest of protocols.
You're a huge music fan. You performed with Arkells. Who are some other Canadian musicians that you admire? There's Arkells.
Literally look like I know what I'm doing up there, don't I?
I'm sure you do.
Hey, I'm going to tell you something. I've never been so nervous in my life as going on stage with the Arkells. I stood on the side of the stage the entire concert. It must have been 90 minutes or 2 hours in before I finally went on stage, and I almost went home about 7 times before that. Anyway, let's see. Who else do I like? Oh, I like a lot of people. So many. Drake,
Yeah.
Neil Young, Dallas Green, City of Color, all those guys. Joni Mitchell. Who else?
But it must have been cool to be on stage, because I know your mom passed away recently. Our condolences. And your mom got you to start playing piano. So to perform in front of a crowd with Arkells, that must have been a big deal for you.
It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. I think it was about a week after we had won the championship, right? So everybody was still riding high from that, and I think it was nearly 17,000 people. It was a beautiful sunny day and evening at the Budweiser stage there. So yeah, it was amazing.
So Nick, no one else is listening, I swear. No one in Ontario, no one at TVO. It's just you and I having a conversation. I have to ask one more question. Is it a possibility that a player by first name Giannis, second name, will be coming a Toronto Raptors? You can tell me, I won't tell anybody else.
Now, I'm not allowed to comment on those things without getting in a lot of trouble. But
So it's a possibility?
Well, I would say this. I believe Toronto is an unbelievable destination for basketball, right? And I believe that we would like to attract the best players in the NBA. How's that for an answer?
I swear, no one else is listening. Nick Nurse, thank you so much. It's been such a thrill to chat with you, and can't wait to see what the Toronto Raptors do in the coming season. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Last week, the town of Collingwood on the southern shores of Georgian Bay released a report from its judicial inquiry into some problematic municipal dealings. It delivered some 306 recommendations, including the creation of a lobbyist registry. Mary Baxter covers the southwestern part of the province for Ontario Hubs. She's with us from London to fill us in on that story. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jayanne. It's good to be here.
So, Mary, there's been some intrigue in Collingwood. Former politician Paul Bonwick, who's turned into a lobbyist there, has made the headlines. What happened there?
Well, it happened in the 2010 to 2014 term of council, the municipal council there. And Bonwick was the brother of the then mayor and knew key town officials. And it had to do with a couple of town transactions. One was a 50% sale of a 50% share of the town's electrical utility. The other one had to do with some expansion and improvements to recreational facilities. And in both of those cases, Bonwick, who was a veteran lobbyist, he represented companies that were involved, but not everyone on council knew about this. So when they voted for the companies to actually be awarded these contracts or to be able to buy the electrical utility, there was a good proportion of council that did not know that he, the brother of the mayor, who also advised the mayor, was actually the lobbyist for these companies.
Okay, so you say council didn't know. So how did this all come to light?
So it slowly came to light. There were many questions around both of these transactions, and beyond Bonwick's involvement in them. And eventually, what happened was about 2 years ago, the town council asked for a judicial inquiry. Now, last week, as you mentioned, the findings of the inquiry were handed down, and it detailed a lot of this information. Now, I think it's important to note here that the findings in the inquiry are not of a criminal, or they don't have criminal or civil liability, but they certainly detail a lot of the activities, and as you mentioned, make a lot of recommendations, of which about a tenth of which, 29 recommendations, are to do with the town establishing a lobbyist registry.
I'm curious, our viewers might be wondering, why should they and other ordinary citizens be worried about this?
Well, I think a really good example of the importance of this kind of situation, there's a couple of really good examples. I mean, for the town of Collingwood, the decisions that were made were actually fairly problematic, and they didn't have access to all of the information that they needed to make sound decisions. And there's concern that the town is out not only the $7.1 million that the judicial inquiry cost, but also the more than $1 million that Bonwick earned out of these two transactions. And then on top of that, there's the legacy of these. So, for instance, the improvements to the recreational facilities involved putting fabric structures around them to preserve them. But the challenge was that the structures themselves only last about 15 years, whereas bricks and mortar would have lasted, 50 years. So you've got a big difference right there. They've had other challenges with the way that those projects were handled as well. So there's a lot of concern. But we've also seen it federally with the We Charity case, where we saw the We Charity receive a federal contract to administer, millions of dollars in student funding for the COVID-19 relief effort, but they were again awarded it without, in very confusing instances when they and they hadn't registered on the lobbyist registry, the federal one. When they did, it was revealed that they had like more than, I think it was 65 communications reports over a period of 6 months. And they approached actually 19 different federal registry or entities. So it's really, really important to have this kind of transparency in dealings with our elected officials. And again, I just want to emphasize what was emphasized to me by many people in this story. The activity of lobbying is not There's nothing wrong with that. That's part of government doing business, but it's when it's not transparent is when the issue arises.
I'm curious, some people may be wondering, what is the role of a lobbyist? Who pays them? What exactly does that look like when we talk about whether it's town council here in Toronto or at the federal level? What is the role of a lobbyist?
Well, typically a lobbyist is someone who might be attached to a company that is asking the government for a favorable decision in terms of their government business, whatever that might be. They can be paid professionals that might represent a business or a whole industry, so that's what a lobbyist is. A lobbyist registry is where they register all of their activity. These types of registries are mandatory at both the federal and provincial levels. So that means that all lobbyists that fall under the specific definitions held by the registry have to register with them. But at the municipal level, here in Ontario, municipalities don't have to have them. And in fact, earlier this year, Collingwood became only the 7th municipality in Ontario to have a lobbyist registry. Now, there is one municipality that must have a lobbyist registry, and that is Toronto.
Why don't the other municipalities have registries set up?
Because they don't have to. There's nothing in provincial legislation that compels them to do this. However, the current mayor of Collingwood, Brian Saunderson, said to me, he feels that municipalities should look very closely at these. One of the challenges is he says he just look at Collingwood's story and what happened there, and they're looking at now something that is ongoing in terms of town administration, so much money that they've had to spend. It's a challenge for some Ontario municipalities, though, I'm told, because there's concerns about how much it costs. And when you're looking at a municipality, like half of the 444 municipalities in Ontario actually have fewer than 10 staff. And so it becomes, something that is fairly hard for them to administer and pay for.
Mary Baxter, I want to thank you very much. Again, another very important story, this time from the southern shores of Georgian Bay. Thank you so much, Mary Baxter, joining us from London, Ontario.
Thanks, Jan.
The agenda this week examined the cost of the province's record spending budget and got David Frum's take on the U.S. presidential election. The agenda's week in review begins with a report card for Ontario's K-12 virtual schools.
We are just finished the first quadmester, which is a new word to me. I've heard of semesters, but now we have quadmesters, and that means it's time for an online report card. So let's go around the horn here, our virtual horn, and talk about how you would grade the program so far. Annie, in your view, how's it going?
Well, I'm not in a school, so I'm not sure I'm the best person to ask. I think that some of it appears to be going okay. A report came out from Ottawa yesterday that raised a lot of concerns about kids' well-being and mental health. And I think maybe the biggest concern is about equity. For kids who are already struggling, families that were dealing with a lot of challenges, it seems to be that it is more challenging to support learning online, and we have to be thinking about that. Relying on families forever and ever is not really sustainable and definitely not equitable.
Emily, what are you seeing in Sudbury?
I think that overall, I'd give us a passing grade. I think that we've done a good job of meeting these challenges and trying to meet the needs of families who are, as Annie said, coming from a variety of starting points as they begin doing this online learning. So I think I'd give us a passing grade. We've worked really hard in our board to make this as smooth a transition as possible, and it's been a real team effort involving really everyone in the board. So I think we're doing pretty well, all things considered.
Pretty well, passing grade. Okay, good. Tesfai, just before you tell us how you're doing, Success Beyond Limits. Just give us the 20-second speech on what you guys do.
Yeah, so we're an education organization that's based in the northwest part of Toronto, and we provide all sorts of academic and social supports. We're based in the local high school at Westview Centennial, which is where we operate our youth space during the school day, and it's open to students from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then we also have a summer program, which is located at York University, where students get an advanced high school credit before they get to high school.
And how much of what you're doing is in person and how much is virtual?
So we have both. So we do have the in-person portion. We work very closely with the administrative team at our local school to ensure that we are aligned with the public health guidelines that are in place, but also the protocols and procedures that they've put in place, and looking at ways that we can continue to support students. But we also know that we can only have a limited amount of students in our space. So we have our virtual youth space that's open for students to access at any point during the school day. So if they're not in the school building, they've opted for virtual learning, they can still get those supports as well.
Okay, and how's the virtual going?
I mean, virtual has been a challenge, I think, for our community and for other communities as well. We know that access to technology has been a barrier for many students, and that's been the case since the lockdown. And that also continues for some students now into the new school year. We know some students have not received pieces of technology till the end of this quad. And we know that that's still an ongoing challenge on top of being able to navigate the online platform. So there are a lot of challenges that young people and families are still facing.
Andrea, how are you managing in Peel with virtual learning?
Well, I've had the privilege of teaching in the online school in Peel, and it's important to note it's in the secondary panel, so I think that's going to be significantly different than my friends in elementary. But I know it was certainly a rocky start in Peel, and I think for many boards. But at the end of the day, I'd probably put us at a B. I think we've adapted well. Many of the educators have, the students have described that they are certainly learning and enjoying the environment, and I'd rate us a B, a level 3 for sure.
Okay, you said a rocky start. What made it rocky?
Well, I think we had to pivot quickly, and as numbers grew in terms of those that are wanting to learn online, that we had to reimagine the education system, and it's no longer brick and mortar, but they had to, in Peel, go from many students in the classroom to many students online and starting an entire online school. And so rather than timetabling for 1,200 students, 1,500 students, 80, 100 staff, you're in the numbers for the Peel Online School at 13,000, 15,000, initially started at 7,000. So, there is significant change in a short period of time. And, this is new learning for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Ron, how about you? How's it going?
Well, I agree. I think we've 3 months ago, nobody would have thought that we would have a virtual school in the secondary panel, and now we do. And we set up that virtual school in a really short record time. If we were to build a brand new school, we'd have lots of lead time for that. We'd have months and months of planning and board staff involved. We condensed that whole piece into about 3.5 weeks to get the school up and running. In the Toronto District School Board, we have 18,000 secondary students in our virtual school. And I would say it's more than a passing grade, and it's more than a level 3 grade. I would say we're doing pretty well.
Give us some of the bullet point highlights of what you think a smart Ontario government going forward would do to reignite the economy in the midst of this pandemic.
Yeah, and to think about the future, let's just situate ourselves here. And I think it surprises Ontarians that again, if we compare the size of our economy to states that we look to, Michigan, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, we've been hearing those states over the last week, incessantly. We're a smaller economy. We were the average size of the 7 states surrounding us 30, 40 years ago. We are now the poorest, as average GDP per capita. I'm not saying at the low end, and certainly the extremes of American society may not be something we want to replicate. But and that comes out of weak business investment, weak R&D investment, weak productivity, and those numbers have tracked for quite a while. What do we do to goose growth somewhat back to what we had 20, 25 years ago. Everybody's facing that, but we've been on a slower decline, slow, steady decline to a greater extent. And we need to think about inclusive growth. And the people at Queen's Park, you asked me about the public servants, they're thinking about this quite a bit. And that was really what they were focusing on with regard to regulations, with regard to increased childcare, with regard to infrastructure investment, we need to emphasize. We talked about broadband investment just a second ago. Huge amounts going into transit, highways to a lesser extent, and other sectors as well. But we have to ask ourselves whether we're making the right investments and doing it effectively. There's one other thing that really surprised me when we were looking at this, and that is about 30 of the 60 states and provinces in the United States and Canada have actually done growth plans, 5-year growth plans. Some of us used to think of those as almost Soviet, but it's remarkable that virtually half the states in the United States, red states as well as blue states, have done growth plans to emphasize the sectors and to focus on the sectors and subsectors that we should be thinking about more. And that might be something, Saskatchewan's done it. We looked at Illinois intensively. That might be something that Ontario wants to look at. Part of the challenge with Ontario is that even as we look out in Toronto and see the cranes and the steady growth and the tech investment and things like that, almost all the job growth over the last decade in Ontario has been in Toronto and Ottawa. Outside those two centers, there's been almost no job growth. We really need to think about inclusive growth going forward. And that's really, thank you, that paper was all about.
Inclusive growth. Okay, Sheila, based on what you're looking at, do you see policies being put in place that will bring us inclusive growth going forward?
Unfortunately, I don't see it. And I think when we look at, again, the big picture from this pandemic, it's racial inequality, it's income inequality, and it's really what a frayed public service and public sector we have at the moment. And I think at this point, with infection rates where they're at, that we really need to switch strategy. The government at this point is just hoping to have a private sector-led both recovery and period to get us through the pandemic. We are nowhere close to the end of this pandemic, unfortunately. We need government to lead, and we need government to lead in terms of both economic growth and in terms of addressing these huge inequalities, both in health outcomes and in economic outcomes.
Craig, last minute to you on whether or not we're getting the policies we need for inclusive growth.
We're moving in the right direction. I mean, when we look at where the job losses have been, it's been disproportionately low-paid workers. And when we look at who, what comprises the population that works within low-paid jobs, what you can see is, there's more women, there's more youths, there's more visible minorities, there's more newcomers that are in those jobs. And so there's no question that this recession has had a very strong inequality dimension to it. I think part of the government response in terms of the Canadian the Canadian emergency income benefits, where you're getting $500 a week. Basically what you're doing is you're maintaining the income that you're replacing the income that those low income workers were making. And so I think we are seeing programs and policies that are designed to address some of that inequality.
I wonder how much internecine warfare you see coming between the Biden wing of the party, which of course is victorious and moderate, and the so-called Bernie Sanders AOC wing of the party, which one suspects will get a little chippier in its demands over the ensuing months. What do you see?
Well, what I see, the greatest resource that progressive wing has is the need of cable television for conflict. It's the main story of the Biden administration is going to be pretty responsible people going to work every day, dealing with very, very difficult problems and succeeding some of the time and failing other times. And that's just not a made for CNN story. CNN doesn't want to hear, we're struggling to put together a climate change agreement without a congressional majority. It's hard, difficult work, and we've made some incremental progress. They want fighting. And the model is ESPN. So the incentive for every cable booker is to bring on, to make AOC a media star and to create a fight between AOC and Biden that, as we saw in the Democratic primaries, didn't actually correspond to where Democratic voters are. And also misunderstands what it means to be on the left wing of the Democratic Party. That people who live in New York, people who book TV, want the left wing to look like the left wing they know. Sophisticated, urban, highly urban, progressive, younger, and not understanding that the thing driving the Democratic Party, for example, toward a bigger definition of healthcare is the people who elected Biden, which is more rural, blacker, less well-educated, and not as culturally modern, not as culturally progressive, but very concerned with basics like college education and healthcare. But those tensions will be there. In a way, the election result does Biden one favor, which is by preserving power in the hands of Mitch McConnell and the Senate Republicans, it gives Biden an intelligible explanation to the progressive wing why he can't do what they want. So they would say things like, we want you to abolish police forces. So Biden's own answer is, well, I think that's A, stupid, and B, obnoxious, and C, likely to lose me the election, and D, nobody wants it. But and all of those things are true, but it's easier to say, hey, you make some points here, but McConnell, I have to have McConnell. I'm as heartbroken as you, McConnell. So McConnell can be for Biden a tool of party discipline. But I think when you think of if you identify the Democratic left with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and urban progressives rather than James Clyburn and black representatives in the southern states, you're doing it wrong.
Well, I have had some pretty good debates over the last week with some people who believe that Bernie Sanders would have done better running an unabashedly socialist campaign against Donald Trump than Joe Biden did. What do you think of those prognostications?
Well, people who those hypothetical matchups are, in the end, they're unanswerable. But I would just say the question is, here's what Joe Biden did to win the presidency in the way he did. He simultaneously produced a mobilization in Black America as big as that produced by Barack Obama. And at the same time, won conservative-leaning, educated suburban voters in places like the suburbs of Phoenix and the suburbs of Houston and Dallas, and most importantly, the suburbs of Philadelphia. And those are the two groups that didn't like Bernie Sanders. So that you say, well, Bernie Sanders would have had to find some other, because he did not strongly appeal to black voters, and because he did not strongly appeal to more affluent, more conservative-leaning suburbanites, he would have had to find some other magic pool of voters. And basically, I would say this: any plan, when someone says, "I have a plan to win power by producing world record turnout among groups of people who vote very lightly," I think the better plan is to produce slight improvements in turnout from people who do vote regularly.
As soon as it turned out that people could use AI to generate fake media, the first use case was in non-consensual pornography. And that's actually where the name deepfake comes from, because the first kind of deepfakes that really hit the public imagination 3.5 years ago were in the form of non-consensual porn on Reddit, and the guy who posted them was somebody called Deepfakes. And he made these fake porn films of celebrities, but it's now become a problem where it's got its own internet ecosystem, and it's not only female celebrities who are targeted. Normal women are targeted too, because the AI can be trained to generate fake pornography of you based on just a few digital images that can be taken from your social media, for example. And now we're also starting to see very disturbing deepfake porn of minors. But I don't see these two things as mutually exclusive. Although pornography leads the way, it is inevitable that deepfakes will also be used in politics and in fraud and all kinds of other avenues where they can be used as disinformation against individuals in a way that hasn't been possible before.
And we seem to be, as a species, hardwired to believe what we see on a video. And therefore, talk to us about the implications of believing what we see when what we see is phony.
Well, It's something that psychologists call processing fluency. So when we see visual information that looks right, that looks real, we're hardwired to want to believe it. And this is happening at a time when video is in fact becoming the most important medium of communication. I think 82% of internet traffic next year is going to be driven by the upload and download of videos. So the fact that video as a medium of communication, a medium which we place so much rigor onto, which we assume to be an extension of our own perception, can be undermined at a time when it's becoming the most important medium of communication is really alarming. But there's a counter effect to this too, and this is that as knowledge of deepfakes start to grow, something called the liar's dividend starts to enhance. So as people become aware that we're entering an epoch where seeing is no longer believing, you can see something with your eyes that looks genuine and authentic, and it could be fake, then you start to deny the veracity of all authentic media as well. And that is, of course, something that's great for bad actors. In a world where anything can be faked, including something that until now we assume is evidence, everything can also be denied.
That's just some of what we covered this week on The Agenda. For more, including the full conversations, you can visit our website, tvo.org, our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda, or our Twitter feed, twitter.com/theagenda. And that's it for this Friday, November 13th, 2020. Next week, we'll find out why Ontario's governing PC party may be in for trouble on its right flank, get some pandemic perspective from fiction writers who've imagined the worst, and check in on Canada's role in the crisis in Yemen. I'm Nam Kiwanuka. Thank you for watching TVO and for joining us online at tvo.org. Have a terrific weekend, and Steve will see you on Monday.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. Ontario Hubs are made possible by the Barry and Laurie Green Family Charitable Trust and Goldie Feldman. And by viewers like you. Thank you.